Hey neighbor, welcome back to ARTV. My name is John and it's time for my final year-end countdown. After a treacherous year filled with some fantastic music but also some stinkers, we've arrived at my top 10 worst albums of 2020. I'm beating a dead horse at this point when I tell you that I think it's been a really good year for music, and maybe that's me trying to overcompensate for the fact that there were some bad albums in the mix. I wasn't exactly struggling to come up with a top 10 or anything, and also I just want to preface the video because I know there's gonna be comments about it. Worst to me also means disappointing. The disappointment factor with an album that I'm going into hoping to love and it turns out really bad or mediocre, that factors into making a worst list. One final thing before I get started, there are two notable exceptions from this list, those being Tattletales by rapper 6ix9ine, as well as Shadow Work by the rock band TRAPT. I think you can probably do the math as to why I haven't included them on this list. I just don't want to talk about them. I really don't want to put any more exposure, even if it is a rant, on their names, so kill it with hellfire, bury it in a hole, let's go. Thank you guys so much from the bottom of my heart for supporting and seemingly enjoying and loving the year-end content that I've been putting out. If you want to help support this very video that you're watching right now, then like this one, subscribe for the love of music. All of the timestamps, including for the dishonorable mentions, are in the description down below, and let's get started at number 10.
Yeah, let's get high as fuck. I try to cover up.
Tickets to My Downfall by Machine Gun Kelly. Some might call it a love letter to pop punk, but let's be honest with ourselves. If Travis Barker from Blink-182 wasn't involved, this would be a cease and desist letter to Machine Gun Kelly. There's worse ways to spend your time, I guess, but for me, this was a horribly unoriginal rip-off style album that took on all of the cliches and tropes of the early 2000s and the sounds of Blink-182, and then just put them all in a bottle, and for some, that is definitely a fun time, but for me, looking for a little bit more, something to advance the genre forward, especially if he's claiming to take credit for a rock resurgence in 2020, this is something that I'm only able to turn off my brain and enjoy when he actually embraces the fact that he doesn't have a very good voice. Brownie points go out to Tickets to My Downfall, I guess for transparency's sake, because it's not at all trying to hide what its intentions are. It's capitalizing on your nostalgia, and it doesn't even do it well. MGK sucks at playing the guitar, and his voice is very rough and inconsistent throughout. There are good performances, I enjoyed some of the tracks on here, but at the end of the day, this is still landing at number 10 on the worst albums of the year, so you can do the math.
So faithful, scratch that baby, I'm grateful. Now you see me shine from my mind.
The number 9 spot goes to Smile by Katy Perry. At one point in time, like a decade ago, Katy Perry was the biggest thing in mainstream pop. And fast forward 10 years, you would think that there was a lot to live and learn from, especially with her having her first child, going through the pregnancy. There was a lot of life, a lot of experiences, yet if you listen to Smile, you wouldn't really catch any of that because this is one of the most mundane, run-of-the-mill, predictable soccer radio mom pop albums that I've listened to in a very long time. Smile as an album screams out of touch loudly in my face, and I have to wonder, how could this be so musically inept? Katy feels dull with her vocal performances. I think a lot of the tracks try to cater to a lot of different fan bases. I see songs that feel like the Glory Days Katy and Never Really Over, and that's a smash. And even Tucked has a great bass line and a nice groove to it. But then there's very cringeworthy moments like Harley's in Hawaii that have me facepalming, and she just really dances around the dial and doesn't know where to go, and as a result, it feels like background music with D-grade collaborators, no features, even though it desperately could have used some life pumped into it. And now we have an album that I'm gonna forget about as soon as I finish talking about it for this video.
All I ever wanted to be is one of the brightest motherfucking falling stars. Can I be one of your heroes?
As your selected mediator for Death Punch therapy, I'm afraid I have very bad news. This diagnosis has been brewing for a long time, and I hate to say it, but you have Limp Bizkit Syndrome! What is Limp Bizkit Syndrome, John? I'm scared! Tell me now! You see, my friends, there's not much to worry about because it's not very contagious. Only a few bands out there catch this. But Limp Bizkit syndrome, it's when the rest of the band are fine and musically competent on their own, but the lead vocalist ruins everything. I might be stirring the pot here, but shit, I think I'm just gonna go ahead and say it. Fate is actually better musically than their past few albums have been, and there's some decent guitar solos, some okay drumming here and there, and despite the lineup changes, it actually felt like they were putting in a little bit more effort. But then here comes Ivan, just running straight through the wall and saying, "I'm angry, I'm macho, I'm all worked up about something, probably a conspiracy theory linked to the alt-right. Get out of my way or I'm gonna slug you!" That's the energy that Fate basically radiates at this point. I've spent a couple of more times listening through this album, and it really is surprising to me the fact that there are catchy moments that remind me of why I liked him in Motigrator back in the day, but Ivan can't help but shoot himself in the foot directly over and over. Put a pin in all that though, I want to quickly summarize this album with a quick analogy. Imagine you're going to the store to buy butt wipes. That's right, you want to buy butt wipes in bulk, and you want to go up to the cashier, get it over with as fast as possible, except they're sold out of the giant pack of butt wipes. So instead, you get the shitty leftovers, and it's Ivan and the gang with Fate. And you grab up the 5-pack instead of the 100 you wanted, you go home, and you just feel disappointed. Everything, it just doesn't feel right. There you go. Fate by Five Finger Death Punch in 2020.
You're everywhere but behind me. I've been breaking up was easy in the 90s.
Sam Hunt is a country artist based out of Nashville that rose to fame with his debut album Montevello in 2014, and here we are, 6 years later? The man clearly didn't want to make an album, but his label probably talked him into it. The guy just seems like he has zero motivation whatsoever to put out music. And here, now we have Southside, a collection of smug arrogance and a sea of nauseatingly overproduced bro-country-leaning tunes that feature old singles and new songs, and it just all feels so haphazard and worthless. Why would you waste your time dancing around on landmines? On one hand, it feels like Sam Hunt is trying to appease the country community. He has some of the songs like Hard to Forget that are still incredibly overproduced. It feels seasick because there's a lot going on, but at the same time, he tries to bring in electronics, a little bit of a hip-hop flair. Oh no, a trap beat is floating up. What is Sam Hunt gonna do? He's gonna bobble the ball and choke in the 9th inning and just do all of that shit that makes it all fall apart. Southside is a dated wasteland of bad ideas, songs that probably didn't work out for other artists, and it was presented to Sam and he said, yeah, I could probably write to that, or I could try and be the nice guy on this one, and it's a little bit stunning and shocking, dare I say, that he tries to paint himself as the victim in some situations. Like, hey, I'm just this nice guy over here observing and judging your life, and I'm gonna have a savior complex about it, and I'm gonna judge the fuck out of you, but sure, you're in the wrong, girl. Hey Sam, you and that attitude of yours? Yeah, they can go fuck themselves at the door. And as it's slamming you in the ass on the way out, just remember, you didn't have to record this, you didn't want to record this, you shouldn't have recorded this, but you chose to record this, and it's flaming garbage.
I'm a psychiatrist, let's talk about it. We can use sign language, I know you about it.
Oh my god, how could I put my favorite R&B artist of all time on the worst list? Poor Justin Bieber. He spent 5 years away, and this is all he had. The man had nothing. He had all of these life experiences. He got married to Haley Baldwin, and nothing at all? Just nothing? Every single song on Changes ironically sounds exactly the fucking same. Yes, we have Yummy. It stands out ahead of the pack because it's so abhorrently nightmarish, but at the same time, there's so much bad on this album. The lyrical content doesn't even feel like it's trying. Pooh Bear on the production just sounds like he's farting around in the studio. And Justin Bieber's overall presence on these tracks, it's virtually non-existent. It's like he checked out at the door. Yeah, all of that I just said, that doesn't make me want to take you seriously as an R&B artist. It makes me want to crumple you up into a little ball and say, "Be gone, Bieber, be gone, you little ball of stink," because this album is just, whew, it's just toxic.
No, I don't discriminate. Bring it back to my place. Yeah, she like it both ways.
I'm gonna open this this one up a little bit differently. I've got a joke for you. Okay, what do you get when you combine muted guitar chords, abysmal production, and the most inconsequential, boring member of One Direction? Well, you get Liam Payne in LP1. That's weird. I'm hearing a lot of angry stans yelling outside my window. LP1 by Liam Payne is hilariously bland. There is no sense of personality to be found, no pulse on the radar. He just bounces around from muted guitar chords to different genres like a beer can in a wave pool. Nothing, in my opinion, could have saved this album from failure. It was barreling straight towards a cliff. In fact, he was already kind of hanging off of the cliff with some of the embarrassing singles he was putting out, like Strip That Down. Just look what his former One Direction bandmates like Harry and Niall are doing, and then compare it to Liam. It's not to say that Liam has no vocal talent, it's just that I think he worked better as more of a background figure in a boy band, and now that he's getting older, he's trying to be edgy. He's trying to stand out from the pack, but instead he's trying his hand at things that don't work, and he's getting burned every time he puts his hand in, and he's being swallowed alive by the industry. Parting words of advice? Step it the fuck up, Liam Payne, or else you're gonna be forgotten about in no time, because I almost didn't remember this album to put it on the list.
Well, I pissed myself on a Texan intersection with George spinning things all over his back.
Number 4, Notes on a Conditional Form by the UK-based alternative meets indie and pop and electronic and whatever else razzle-dazzle they can pull out of their shoes this day and age. It's the 1975. Now, before you get too offended and start raking me over the coals for my thoughts on Notes, I think this album is easily their worst in the canon. I've been a fan for a long time now. The self-titled album is incredibly fun. I Like It When You Sleep was my album of the year in 2016, people. And in 2018, A Brief Inquiry, there were some gems on there. I just felt it was a little bit too overly ambitious. And this time around, my god, they bit off way more than they could ever chew. This is an incredibly pretentious record that just kind of parades around for 22 tracks, and it has no reason to stick around for that long. One of the biggest reasons why this album feels so pretentious to me is their frontman, Matty Healy. He, for some reason, feels very confident about the fact that the 1975 are the saviors of music that can pull off every genre under the sun, and that's not true at all. It's like they want us to look at this bloated-ass 22-song-long album that's almost 90 minutes, an hour and a half, and we're supposed to marvel at it like it's an exotic creature in a zoo, and we're oohing and eyeing, oh, my respect, oh, I didn't know you could do this. But if I wanted to listen to these genres that they're attempting to do, like dancehall, Jamaican-leaning stuff, UK garage, and even some of this minimalistic instrumental stuff, why would I go to the 1975 for that? Because that's not at all their forte, and Notes on a Conditional Form is living proof of that.
Got stricken with the affluenza, SoundCloud rapper all silver and gold, but he ain't got enough to buy a soul.
Theory of a dead man? More like theory of a political meltdown. Seriously, who in their right mind would ask for Theory, of all bands on the planet, to tackle politics, and for them to do it this poorly, without even an ounce of effort? It just feels like they're picking up Facebook headlines from the past month. They're putting these things into songs and then saying, yeah, here's our stance on politics. Tyler Connolly as a frontman has never sounded so bored and so uncharismatic. The songs are flaming dog shit. The lyrics are atrocious but also simultaneously hilarious. Listen to Affluenza and tell me you didn't laugh out loud the entire fucking time. The cadence that Tyler tries to blend between talk, singing, and also maybe slightly rapping is just so pure, unadulterated cringe, but also the beats backing them up, the overly produced steps that they're continuing to take. It's just hilarious, but also, I don't believe a single word that's coming out of Tyler Connolly's mouth. Theory, for whatever reason, seem to think that they are the right band to take on these very heavy topics about politics, about domestic abuse, and they do it by dipping a toe into the pool. They should just be swimming out there, but instead they're like, I don't really want to get wet. I wasn't planning on going for a swim today, but I'm still gonna talk about it. And that is Say Nothing, which is exactly what they should have done before making this album.
I never fall in love, but I'm looking like a clown in a oh wow, put my phone down.
Number 2, Everything Means Nothing by the fake deep simp rap hero himself, Blackbear. Blackbear's real life name is Matthew Musto, and that sounds dangerously close to Mitchell Musso, who we should remember fondly from the Disney Channel era, and I have to ask, Oliver Oaken? Is that you? Secondhand embarrassment is the biggest thing that I feel, and I know the exact type of person that unironically bops to this album. It's really insufferable. From the production to the title of the album, oh my god, cringe, everything means nothing. How'd you come up with that one? Also, the titles of these songs, there's 3 in a row that go, I feel bad, I feel too much, I felt that. Is that like your shit trilogy? The trilogy of feelings, the cinematic universe from Blackbear coming to a theater near you. Blackbear sounds like an entitled whiner all over the track list. He makes such a big stink about absolutely nothing. Like, really? These are your biggest problems in life? Sobbing in Cabo? I just facepalm when some of these songs come on and I have to relive the travesty that is Everything Means Nothing. Things are getting dangerously close to the edge as we barrel towards the #1 worst album of 2020, but before I reveal that, I have to give off some dishonorable mentions. Unfortunately, these are albums that I found incredibly disappointing, awful, outright bad. Some of them do need more context and explanation, so I'm gonna talk about them all very briefly, including one that's probably gonna break a lot of y'all's hearts. High Off Life probably would have made the list proper had I cared to actually listen to it more than 1.5 times. The songs all sound identical. At this point, he is literally just shitting out whatever the fuck comes to him in the studio on his mind, and clearly that's not much because he repeats himself endlessly. Here's the heartbreaker that a lot of you didn't see coming. It's Father of All Motherfuckers by Green Day. This is indeed their worst album. It took me a while to come to that conclusion, but I just have had no desire to come back to this record. It's incredibly boring, forgettable. I think the songs just are in one ear, out the other, and to have no desire to come back to the tracks, that unfortunately speaks volumes, and the quality is just way off, and I hope that they can bounce back from something this disappointing. Meghan Trainor appearing on a worst list? Do I really even need to explain myself? I think this album's numerous delays probably should have hinted at the quality that wouldn't be coming. Treat Myself is kind of a disaster. It is slightly better than her last album, but how much is that really saying? Eternal Atake by Lil Uzi Vert was entirely overhyped way too long, and the songs just weren't really there. Now granted, I've never been huge on Lil Uzi, but I've had songs of his grow on me. This album did not at all, and I've yet to see what the big stink is about. I don't get it. What could possibly go wrong? Was the debut album by Dominic Fike, and unfortunately it came off sounding like a glorified mixtape? I do see promise here, that's why it didn't make the list proper. There's some okay songs, but I just find him very irritating. I can't quite put a pin in it, but does anybody else understand me on that? And finally, we arrive at the last dishonorable mention. It's Infinitely Ordinary by the Rex. This is just like hyperpop that's trying to be quirky and original, and it's not at all. With song titles like Fuck Somebody with a V instead of a U and fuck, you can probably see exactly the crowd of outcasts that they're trying to appeal to. The sugary pop production is insufferable. I could not bear another listen through this. It's absolute flaming trash, and it just narrowly missed the actual top 10. And with those dishonorable mentions out of the way and swept under the rug into oblivion, it's time to move on to the #1 worst album of 2020.
Now I'm just skiing up in Aspen. That means I'm cooler than Alaskans. Chicks freeze when I'm passing.
Ladies and gentlemen, presenting your worst album of 2020, Translation by the Black Eyed Peas. This is flaming garbage, and oh how the mighty fall. Now listen, I was never massive on the Black Eyed Peas. I enjoyed some of their early output, and even Masters of the Sun, their comeback album last year that featured no Fergie, just the 3 core members, the dudes rapping and going a bit more of a conscious hip-hop route. That was fun, and I could deal with that. But Translation jumped on the bandwagon of Latin trap reggaeton crossovers so hard that I think they shattered a hole in the space-time continuum. The songs on Translation are seemingly never ending. It's like they wander in the desert for 40 days and 40 nights, and they didn't even have the damn common decency to shorten the song lengths. Obviously, that is a modern trope to make songs a little bit shorter. They're in one ear, they're out the other. They're made for whatever, TikTok, social media, background music, and a movie, whatever the case might be, but the Black Eyed Peas said, no, no, we're not doing that. We're still churning out 3.5 to 4 minute long songs, and we're gonna do absolutely nothing on the track. By the end of translation, they're literally just making sound effects and calling it a song. All three of the original rappers of the Black Eyed Peas do absolutely nothing other than spit out constant streams of bullshit, constant cliches, absolutely nothing. It's filler content up to a T, and somehow people look at that and say, yeah, let's praise that. That's the Black Eyed Peas. That's what I've been missing. That's the hole in my heart. That's it for my top 10 worst albums of 2020. Keep in mind that these were all just my opinions. I would love to know what you thought of my own list. Maybe leave your own list in the comment section down below. Don't forget to drop a like on this video. Thank you again for all the love that you've given to the year-end content. If you want to see last year's worst albums, then tap this card here. Tap here for another recent video. And other than that, I will see you here soon on ARTV.